Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. Sarah Thompson's fingers trembled slightly as she touched the unfamiliar receipt. She'd originally just wanted to sort through the odds and ends in Michael's suit pockets, like she'd done every Sunday for the past 10 years. But this time, her daily chores turned into the beginning of a nightmare. The Waverly Hotel, suite service, Sarah mumbled, her voice so low it was barely audible. Her gaze was fixed on the unfamiliar amount that went far beyond an ordinary business lunch. Sunlight poured in through the windows of the Brooklyn apartment, casting an ironic warmth over the usually calm Sunday afternoon. Sarah stood in the center of the living room, feeling as if she was pinned in place by the light. A million images flashed through her mind. The frequent overtime Michael had been working lately, the mysterious phone calls, and the dwindling communication between them. All the pieces suddenly pieced together into a reality she had been avoiding. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to calm her violent heartbeat. What's she gonna do? Questioning Michael? Pretend you never saw this receipt? Just then, she heard the sound of a key being inserted into the lock of the door. "Honey, I'm home." Michael's voice came from the foyer, accompanied by the muffled sound of a briefcase on the floor. Sarah quickly shoved the receipt back into her suit pocket and forced a smile. "I'm in the living room," she responded, her voice an octave higher than usual. Michael walked into the living room with his usual gentle smile on his face. He leaned in and gave Sarah a light kiss, but she felt the kiss was colder than ever. "How was your day?" Michael asked casually, loosening his tie as he did so. Sarah looked into her husband's eyes, searching for any sign of guilt or unease. But all she saw was the familiar tiredness and, was it impatience? "It's okay," she said softly, "just a normal Sunday. How about you? Work going well?" Michael shrugged. "The usual. There's never a shortage of trouble on Wall Street, but we always manage." His eyes swept over the clothes in Sarah's hands. "Oh, you don't have to worry about those. I'll just do it myself." Sarah felt a tingle. There was a time when Michael would have thanked her for doing these chores. Right now, all he seems to want to do is hide his stuff. "It's okay. I'm done," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. She handed Michael the folded clothes. "What do you want for dinner?" "I was thinking maybe we could cook together, like old times." Michael took the clothes, but his attention had turned to his cell phone. "Sorry, honey. I have some work to take care of. Feel free to do whatever you want. No need to wait for me." With that, he headed for the study, leaving Sarah standing alone in the center of the living room, surrounded by unspoken questions and a growing distance. Sarah looked out the window, the Brooklyn skyline looking beautiful in the setting sun. Yet at the moment, the view made her feel a wave of loneliness she had never felt before. She realized that her marriage, like the dying daylight outside her window, was slowly slipping into the darkness of the unknown. She needed someone to talk to, a friend she could trust completely. Sarah picked up her cell phone and hovered her finger over Jessica's number. She took a deep breath and hit the dialing button. The phone rang 3 times before Jessica's familiar voice came through. "Hey, Sarah. What's up?" Sarah tried to keep her emotions in check, but there was still a hint of trembling leaking into her voice. "Jess, are you free right now? I need to talk to you." Jessica heard the uneasiness in her friend's voice and immediately replied, "Sure, Sarah. Do you want me to come over? Or do you want to come out for a walk?" Sarah hesitated, glancing at the closed door of the study. "Can we meet at the park? I need to get some fresh air." "No problem. Meet me at the usual place in 20 minutes," Jessica said, concern in her voice. After hanging up, Sarah took a deep breath and straightened her appearance. She knocked gently on the study door. "Michael, I'm going out for a bit. I'll be back later." A muffled response came from inside, and Sarah wasn't sure if Michael had actually heard her. But at the moment, she had no time for that. She grabbed her keys and purse and gently closed the door to her apartment, her mind filled with uncertainty about the future. As Sarah walked down the familiar streets of Brooklyn, she felt a strange sense of relief. It was as if by leaving that space of questioning and doubt, She could finally face her feelings head-on. With that, however, comes a bigger question. How should she face the coming storm? On a bench in Brooklyn Bridge Park, Sarah Thompson clutches a cup of coffee that has gone cold and gazes lazily at the Manhattan skyline in the distance. The chilly late fall wind blew against her cheeks, but she barely felt the cold. She was experiencing a chill inside her that was harsher than the fall winds. "Sarah?" A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. Sarah looks up and sees Jessica Martinez walking briskly toward her with a concerned look on her face. "God, you look awful," Jessica said, taking a seat next to Sarah. She reached for Sarah's hand. "What the hell happened?" Sarah took a deep breath and tried to control her emotions. "Jess, I think Michael might have cheated on him." Her voice trembled, as if saying the words took all her strength. Jessica sucked in a cold breath, but quickly composed herself. "How did you know?" she asked softly. Sarah tells Jessica about the hotel receipts and all the details she's noticed in recent months. Michael's late nights, mysterious phone calls, and their growing estrangement. "I don't know what to do, Jess," Sarah said, tears finally coming to her eyes. "I don't even know who I am anymore. I put my whole life into this marriage, and now everything feels like a lie." Jessica patted Sarah's back gently and gave her a reassuring hug. "Sarah, listen to me. You are not just Michael's wife. You are first and foremost Sarah Thompson, a talented and compassionate woman. Remember how brilliant you were when you worked at the ad agency?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "That feels like a lifetime ago. I've been out of the workplace for so long that I don't know what else I can do." "But that doesn't mean you've lost your value," Jessica said firmly. "You've just shifted your focus to your family. Now, maybe it's time to refocus on yourself." Sarah was silent for a moment, recalling the evolution of her relationship with Michael. From the sweetness of the passionate love period, to the mutual love after marriage, to the estrangement now. She realized that in the process, she was gradually losing her voice and becoming more and more dependent on Michael's approval to define her worth. "You know," Sarah said softly, "I suddenly realized that I haven't asked myself what I want in a long time. I've been trying to be the perfect wife for so long that I've forgotten who I was originally." Jessica nodded. "It's very common, Sarah, but now that you realize it, you can start to change. You don't have to give up your marriage, but you can start to rebuild who you are." Sarah took a deep breath and felt a glimmer of hope sprout in her heart. "You're right. Whatever happens next, I need to figure out what I want for myself first." "So," Jessica asked gently, "Sarah Thompson, what do you want to be besides someone's wife?" The question echoed in Sarah's mind. She looked off into the distance to Manhattan, where her career had begun. Suddenly, a long-lost longing awoke in her heart. I want to find the confident, creative me again," Sarah said slowly. "I want to prove to myself that I'm not just an accessory to Michael, that I can stand on my own and have my own value." Jessica gave a relieved smile. "That's the Sarah I know. Remember, no matter what happens, you have the power to redefine your life." As the sun begins to sink in the west, Sarah feels something inside her change. Although the road ahead was still full of uncertainty, for the first time she felt the courage to face the future. When she got home, Sarah stood in the doorway of her study, her hand on the doorknob but slow to turn it. Michael's voice came from inside, still making that mysterious call. She wanted to go right in and question him, but suddenly realized she wasn't ready to face the possible truth. She turned toward the bedroom, feeling a wave of exhaustion hit her. After her conversation with Jessica, Sarah is filled with conflicting emotions: anger, confusion, sadness, and a glimmer of hope for the future. She needed time to organize her thoughts and re-examine her relationship with Michael. Sarah's eyes landed on an old chest at the top of the closet. It contained albums and mementos that she had carefully kept over the years. Maybe looking back would help her make sense of her current predicament. She gently took the box down and sat down on the bedroom floor. Sarah took a deep breath and flipped open the cover of the album. The first photo caught her eye. It was a selfie of her and Michael at an upscale Manhattan bar. The corners of Sarah's mouth couldn't help but float into a bitter smile as memories came flooding back like a tidal wave. Sarah Thompson gently strokes the leather cover of the album, her fingertips feeling the grain left by the years. She was sitting on the floor of her bedroom, her back against the edge of the bed, with several cardboard boxes scattered around her. These boxes are filled with bits and pieces of her and Michael's life together. Taking a deep breath, she flipped through the album. The first photo caught her eye. It was a selfie of her and Michael at an upscale Manhattan bar. A smile couldn't help but appear at the corners of Sarah's mouth as memories came flooding back like a tidal wave. A high-class business reception, New York, 2010. Sarah straightened her little black dress and took a deep breath as she walked into the bustling venue. As the youngest creative director at the ad agency, she knew that such occasions were crucial for networking. Just as she was about to get a glass of champagne, a tall figure accidentally bumped into her. "Oh, I'm sorry." A low male voice rang out. Sarah looked up and met a pair of apologetic blue eyes. "That's okay," Sarah smiled. "It's always hard to avoid crowding on these occasions." "I'm Michael Thompson." He held out his hand. "First time at an event like this, a little nervous." Sarah took his hand and felt a strange current. "Sarah Miller. Don't worry, you look more subdued than most." They smiled at each other as if they had found each other's peaceful harbor in the midst of the noisy crowd. Sarah turned to the next page, a picture of her and Michael in Central Park. The sun was shining that day. Michael's arm was on her shoulder, and the two of them were smiling with pure happiness. She remembers it was 3 months after they dated. Michael has just been promoted on Wall Street, and she has taken on a project for a major client. They strolled through the park, sharing the joy of their respective successes. "You're amazing, Sarah," Michael said at the time, a gleam of pride in his eyes. "Your creativity always hits home." "Each other," Sarah replied mischievously, "Mr. Rising Star of Wall Street." At the time, they were both genuinely happy for each other's accomplishments. Sarah looks back on how good it felt to support each other and grow together. The album flipped to photos of the wedding. Cherry blossoms were in full bloom at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden in the spring of 2012. Sarah wore a simple and elegant white wedding dress and Michael was in a sharp black suit. They exchanged vows under the cherry blossom tree, promising to love and support each other as they face life's challenges. "Together we will realize our dreams," Michael said in his pledge, "and your success is my success." Sarah remembers how moved she was to think she had found the other half of her life, someone who truly understood and supported her. However, as you turn the pages backward, the scenes in the photos begin to gradually shift from workplaces and lavish parties to family gatherings and holiday celebrations. Sarah noticed that her eyes had also quietly changed in the photos, from ambitious and passionate to gentle and introspective. One photo in particular caught her attention. It was taken shortly after she quit her job at the ad agency. The photo shows her standing in the kitchen of their newly purchased Brooklyn apartment, smiling but with a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. Sarah remembers that decision coming somewhat suddenly. Michael's work is getting busier and busier, and he often works late into the night. "Maybe it's time to slow down and work on our family life," he suggested at the time. Sarah hesitated and finally agreed. She told herself that it was only temporary and that she could always return to work. But as time passes, the original agreement and plan are gradually forgotten in the daily chores. Sarah closed the album and leaned back against the edge of the bed, closing her eyes. Memories recede like the tide, leaving a residue of thoughts. She realized then that her relationship with Michael had not changed overnight. Those little compromises, those insignificant give-ups, add up over time and eventually make her lose herself. But at the same time, revisiting these memories reminds Sarah of the passionate and ambitious version of herself. The Sarah who dared to pursue her dreams and was unafraid of challenges has not disappeared, but has only fallen asleep for the time being. Sarah stood up and put the album back on the shelf. Pushing the door to the study open, the doorknob hit the wall with a loud thud. Michael was startled and looked up from his computer. "We need to talk now." Sarah's voice was cold as ice. Michael frowned. "Sarah, I'm dealing with more important than your marriage?" Sarah interrupted, slamming the hotel receipt on his desk. "Explain this." Michael's face turned instantly pale. "Sarah, let me explain. Explain what?" Explain how you betrayed our marriage. Sarah's voice began to rise, angry tears glistening in her eyes. Michael stood up and tried to get closer to Sarah. It's not what you think. I can explain. Don't come near me. Sarah took a step back. I gave you the chance to explain, Michael. For months I've been waiting for you to come forward and tell me what happened. But you haven't said anything? Because it's not about our marriage. Michael raised his voice. It's about work. Sarah sneered. Oh, really? Late-night phone calls, mysterious overtime, and a luxury hotel suite? You think I'm going to believe such lame excuses? Damn it, Sarah, said Michael, punching the table. Why can't you trust me for once? Trust you? Sarah's voice trembled with anger. Why should I trust you when you kept me in the dark and treated me like an idiot in need of protection? Michael took a deep breath and tried to calm down. The company is experiencing legal problems, okay? I've been meeting with a team of lawyers to discuss a response. Oh, now you want to explain? Sarah said sarcastically. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Or do you think your wife is too stupid to understand these complicated matters? I just don't want you to worry. Michael yelled. No, Michael. Sarah shook her head, tears finally falling. You are not wanting me in your life. Over the years, I've given up my career and put everything into this family. And you? You've pushed me further and further away. I never asked you to give up your career. Michael retorted. You don't say it explicitly, but your behavior says it all. Sarah's voice was low and hurt. Every time I mention wanting to get back into the workforce, you always have a bunch of reasons why it's not a good time. The room fell into silence, the only sound being the sharp breathing of the two men. Finally, Sarah took a deep breath. Even if you're telling the truth, Michael, it doesn't change anything. The problem isn't the damn receipt. It's that the trust between us is gone. Michael slumped his shoulders. So, what do we do now? Sarah wiped her eyes. I don't know. But I do know one thing. I need time and space. I can't live like this anymore, feeling like an outsider. You mean, you're leaving? There was panic in Michael's voice. For the time being, Sarah said, I need to find myself again. And you, Michael, you need to think about what kind of marriage you really want. Sarah turned toward the door, giving Michael one last look before leaving. What she saw was a stranger, a man she was no longer sure she knew. I'm going to Jessica's for a few days, she said, and in the meantime, I want you to really think about our relationship. If you decide to come clean about everything, including the things you think you're protecting me from, you know how to reach me. With that said, Sarah closed the door and left, leaving Michael standing alone in the den, facing the debris of their marriage. Sarah put the last of her clothes in the closet of Jessica's guest room and breathed a long sigh of relief. The Brooklyn streetscape outside her window felt both familiar and unfamiliar. It was as if the experiences of the last few days had made her reacquaint herself with herself and re-examine her relationship with Michael. Are you okay? Jessica asked with concern as she leaned against the doorframe. Sarah turned and smiled. Well, I think I'll be fine. She walked over to her desk and opened her laptop. Now, it's time to start over. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, updating her dusty resume. Every project and every accomplishment evokes memories of her past career. The confident, creative Sarah seems to be waking up. Meanwhile, in their apartment, Michael sat in the darkness of his study, the light from his cell phone screen illuminating his tired face. He hesitated, then started typing. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I know an apology won't make up for my mistakes, but I hope you'll give me a chance to explain everything. I'll respect your decision to need space, but remember that I love you and I'll always be here for you. He stared at the message for a long time before finally hitting send. Back at Jessica's, Sarah is browsing LinkedIn to reconnect with her professional network. Suddenly, the cell phone vibrated. It's Michael's message. She looked away, putting her phone aside for the moment and continuing to focus on the task at hand. Hey, look at this, Sarah greeted Jessica as she came over. There's an online course on digital marketing that looks good. I think I need to update my skills. Jessica nodded approvingly. Sounds like a good idea. By the way, has Michael contacted you? Sarah sighed. There is? He sent a text apologizing. But honestly, I'd rather focus on reinventing my career right now. Just then, Sarah's cell phone lit up again. This time it was an unexpected caller, her old coworker David. "Sarah, I'm so glad I finally got in touch with you." David's voice was full of enthusiasm. "I heard you might be returning to the workforce. We just happen to have a position in our company that would be a good fit for you. Are you interested in learning more?" Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. "Sure, I'm interested. Can you tell me more details?" At the same time Sarah was talking to David, Michael was sitting in the office of a marriage counselor. "So, you're here alone," the counselor said gently. "Where's your wife?" Michael smiled bitterly. "She needs some space right now, but I want to save our marriage. I want to learn how to be a better husband and how to communicate better." The counselor nodded. "That's a good start, Michael. Recognizing the problem is the first step to solving it." Back at Jessica's, Sarah had just finished her call with David with a long overdue look of excitement on her face. "Well?" Jessica asked impatiently. "They invited me to an interview next week," Sarah said, with a twinkle in her eye. "It's a digital marketing director position that fits right in with my experience and the new skills I've recently learned." "Awesome." Jessica gave Sarah a big hug. Just then, Sarah's cell phone lit up again. It was another message from Michael. "Sarah, I want to see a marriage counselor today. I know we have a lot of issues to work through, but I want us to work together. If you're willing, I'd like you to attend the next counseling session with me. Regardless of your decision, I will support your decision to return to work. I am deeply sorry for ignoring your feelings in the past." Sarah stared at the message, feeling conflicting emotions inside. She turned to Jessica. "Do you think I should give him a chance?" Jessica gently held Sarah's hand. "That's for you to decide, honey. But remember, whatever you decide, put yourself first." Sarah took a deep breath and began to respond to Michael's message. "Michael, I need some time to think about it. But I agree, we do need to talk. I have an important job interview next week, and when it's over, maybe we can attend a counseling session together. That doesn't mean everything will go back to the way it was, though. We both need to make changes." After sending this message, Sarah felt a strange sense of calm. She knew the road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but at least now, she felt like she was taking control of her life. Whether it's her career or her marriage, she's ready for a new challenge. "Okay," Sarah said to Jessica, a determined smile appearing on her face. "Now, help me pick out what to wear for the interview." It's time to reintroduce the world to Sarah Thompson. Sarah stood in the doorway of the counseling center and took a deep breath. The autumn sunlight spilled gently over her shoulders, but it couldn't dispel the apprehension she felt inside. Just then she saw Michael's figure appear from around the corner. Their eyes met in midair, and a moment of awkwardness made both of them slightly uncomfortable. "Hi," Michael said softly, standing in front of Sarah but keeping his distance. "Hi," Sarah responded, trying to squeeze out a smile. They walked into the building side by side in silence, the tension in the elevator almost suffocating. As they walked into Dr. Elena Martinez's office, they were greeted by a mild-mannered, middle-aged woman. "Sarah and Michael, welcome," Dr. Martinez said with a smile. "Have a seat. Before we begin, I want to emphasize that this is a safe space. Our goal is to communicate and understand, not to judge." Sarah and Michael nodded and sat at opposite ends of the couch. "So, who wants to start with the reason you're here?" Dr. Martinez asked gently. Sarah and Michael looked at each other, and finally Sarah spoke up. "I feel like there is a communication problem between us. I felt ignored, like my thoughts and feelings no longer mattered." Michael looked a little rattled. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. Sarah, I just wanted to protect you and our family." Dr. Martinez nods. "Let's try an I feel statement." "Sarah, can you start with I feel and express how you feel?" Sarah took a deep breath. I feel unappreciated when you make big decisions and don't tell me. Like I'm not important enough to be trusted." Michael's expression became pained. "I felt, when I tried to protect you, I was actually afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of letting you down." Dr. Martinez nods encouragingly. "Good. Now let's dig deeper. Sarah, you mentioned feeling neglected. When did this start?" Sarah thought for a moment. "I think It probably started when I gave up my job. At first, I thought it was for our family. But gradually, I felt like I was losing myself, and Michael seemed to be getting more and more distant. Michael interjected, I didn't mean to alienate you, Sarah. The pressures of the job are mounting, and I feel compelled to protect you from them. But that's not your responsibility alone, Michael, Sarah said, a little agitated. We're a couple. We should face difficulties together. Dr. Martinez intervened at the right time. I noticed that you seem to have different expectations of your marital roles. Michael, you seem to think that you should bear all the stress alone? Michael lowered his head. I've always felt it was my responsibility. That's what my father did. But what does that mean for Sarah? Dr. Martinez asked softly. Sarah's eyes glistened with tears. It makes me feel like an outsider, Michael. It's like you don't trust me to be able to deal with these issues. Of course I trust you, Sarah, said Michael eagerly. I don't want you to worry. But that just makes me even more worried. Sarah's voice rose. Your mysterious behavior makes me wonder if something is terribly wrong. Even wondering if you're having an affair. The room fell into silence. Dr. Martinez gave them some time to digest this confession. Finally, Michael broke the silence with deep remorse in his voice. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I never realized that my actions would cause you such harm. I was just trying to be a good husband, but it looks like I screwed up. Sarah's expression softened a bit. I'm responsible for that too, Michael. I should have been more direct about how I felt instead of suffering in silence. Dr. Martinez smiles and says, it's a great realization. Communication is a two-way street. Now, let's discuss some specific steps to help you improve communication and rebuild trust. Over the next few days, Dr. Martinez guided them through a number of specific plans, including a weekly honesty time, where they could safely share any thoughts and feelings, as well as activities to promote intimacy. When the counseling ended, both Sarah and Michael felt exhausted, but at the same time there was a sense of relief. Remember, Dr. Martinez said as he walked them out the door, rebuilding trust and communication is a process. There will be ups and downs, but it's important to remain patient and open-minded. Sarah and Michael walked out of the office together, and the atmosphere in the elevator was much more relaxed than it had been on the way in. Michael said hesitantly, maybe we could get together for a cup of coffee? Talk? Sarah looked at Michael and saw the hope and apology in his eyes. She nodded gently, okay, I guess we do need to talk. The fall sun was still warm as they walked out of the building. Sarah took a deep breath and felt new hope sprout in her heart. She knew there was a long road ahead, but at least now, they were walking side by side again. Sarah stood in front of the mirror, carefully straightening her blazer. Today was her first day back on the job, and excitement and nervousness swirled in her stomach. She took a deep breath and gave her mirror self an encouraging smile. Are you ready? Michael's voice came from behind him. Sarah turned to see him standing in the bedroom doorway, a cup of coffee in his hand. I guess so, Sarah said gratefully as she took the coffee. Thank you. Michael gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze. You'll do great. Remember, I'm always here if you need any support. Sarah felt a rush of warmth come over her. This support and understanding is exactly what they have been trying to cultivate after marriage counseling. Upon arriving at her new company, Sarah is surrounded by enthusiastic coworkers. Her immediate supervisor, a competent woman named Rachel, gave her a tour of the office. We're very excited to have you on board, Sarah, Rachel said with a smile. Your experience in traditional advertising, coupled with your recently learned digital marketing skills, is exactly what we need. Sarah has worked hard to adapt to her new work environment. Some of the software updates challenged her, but she was determined not to let these minor difficulties defeat her. At lunch, she volunteered to join the conversation with her coworkers, sharing some of her past work experiences. Wow, you used to do commercials for that brand? That's so cool. A young coworker exclaimed. Sarah felt a surge of pride, realizing that her experience was indeed valuable. When she gets home from work, Sarah finds that Michael has prepared dinner. Want to talk about your first day? Michael asked as he set the dishes. Sarah nodded, and they sat down for what the counselor suggested as honesty time. To be honest, Today has been both exciting and a little overwhelming. Sarah confesses, there are some new technologies that I'm not quite familiar with yet, but my coworkers have been very friendly and supportive. Michael listened intently. Sounds like a good start. Did you encounter any particular challenges? Sarah told him about the new project management software and how she was trying to learn it. Michael gave her some advice and shared his experience of learning new skills on the job. Over the next few weeks, Sarah gradually adjusted to the new pace of work. She came across a tricky project, developing a digital marketing strategy for a legacy brand. The project made her both excited and nervous. Sarah worked late one night. She sent Michael a text explaining that she needed to work late. To her surprise, Michael not only showed understanding, but also promised to take care of the housework and prepare dinner. When Sarah finally gets home from work, she finds that Michael has not only made dinner, but also a relaxing foot soak for her. "You're so sweet," Sarah said, touched. Michael smiled and said, "I know you work hard. I want you to know that I will always be there for you." On weekends, they cooked together, as suggested by the counselor. As they prepared the ingredients, they chatted about their respective weeks. "I think our communication has gotten better," Sarah said as she chopped vegetables. "I might have felt guilty about working late before, but now I feel like we understand each other better." Michael nodded in agreement. "I feel the same way. Seeing the changes you've made since returning to the workforce makes me realize how important it is to support your career." A few weeks later, Sarah managed to finish that tricky project. Her creative solutions were highly praised by the client, and Rachel praised her in a team meeting. Sarah brought invaluable insight, Rachel told the team, and she successfully combined the essence of traditional advertising with new digital strategies. That night, Sarah and Michael celebrated her success. As they raised their glasses to clink, Sarah felt a new sense of balance. She's rediscovering her place in her career, while her relationship with Michael grows stronger in the process. "I'm proud of you," Michael said sincerely, "not only for your workplace accomplishments, but for your courage to pursue the life you want." Sarah smiled and shook Michael's hand. "This is all the result of our joint efforts. Our relationship, my work, it's all going in a better direction." Later that night, while lying in bed, Sarah thought back over the past few weeks. She realizes that while returning to work and rebuilding her marriage are both challenging, she is learning to find a balance between the two. There may be ups and downs in the future, but at the moment, Sarah feels a sense of peace and hope that has been missing for a long time. She knew that as long as she and Michael continued to make an effort to communicate and support each other, they could face any challenge together. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.